The air in the museum was heavy with the scent of polished wood and time. An elderly man, his silver hair catching the dim glow of the chandeliers, shuffled forward, his cane tapping a slow rhythm against the marble floor. His eyes, clouded yet sharp, fixed on a painting that seemed to call him from across the gallery, as if it held a secret only he could hear. Elliot Grayson, 82 years old, had not stepped foot in the Grand Metropolitan Museum for nearly 6 decades. His hands trembled as he gripped his cane, not from age but from the weight of memory that surged with every step. The painting ahead, The Silent Shore by Clara Velmont, was no mere artwork. It was a portal to a life he had buried, a life that now clawed its way back to the surface. The museum was quiet that afternoon, save for the murmurs of a small tour group trailing their guide, a young woman named Sarah with a voice as bright as her clipboard. She spoke of brushstrokes and historical context, but Elliot barely heard her. His focus was singular, his heart pounding as he approached the painting. The canvas depicted a stormy sea, waves crashing against a jagged cliff, a lone figure standing at its edge, shrouded in mist. To others, it was a masterpiece of light and shadow. To Elliot, it was a mirror. "Sir, would you like to join the group?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie. She smiled warmly, her eyes scanning his frail frame with gentle concern. "We're just about to discuss the symbolism in Velmont's work." Elliot shook his head, his voice raspy but firm. "No, thank you. I'd like to stand in front of it. Alone, if I may." Sarah hesitated, glancing at the small crowd behind her. "Of course, sir. Take your time." She stepped back, sensing something unspoken in his request, something that made her pause. Elliot moved closer, his cane forgotten as he stood before the painting. The figure on the cliff seemed to shift under his gaze, its silhouette sharpening into someone he once knew. Margaret. Her name burned in his chest, a wound that had never healed. 60 years ago, she had stood beside him in this very museum, her laughter filling the halls as they marveled at this same painting. They were young then, reckless with dreams, promising each other a life as wild and free as the sea in Velmont's work. But promises, like waves, could erode even the strongest cliffs. He closed his eyes, and the memory flooded back. Margaret's hand in his, her voice teasing him about his old soul, even at 22. They had planned to marry, to travel the world, to chase every horizon. But war came, and with it, choices that tore them apart. Elliot had enlisted, believing it was his duty. Margaret begged him to stay, her eyes filled with a fear he didn't understand until it was too late. When he returned, she was gone. No letter, no trace. Only rumors that she had left the city, perhaps the country. He had searched for years, but the world was vast, and his heart grew heavy with each unanswered question. Now, standing before the silent shore, Elliot felt her presence again. Was it the painting, or was it his mind, desperate to rewrite the past? He reached out, his fingers hovering over the canvas, as if he could touch her through the layers of paint and time. "Sir, please don't touch the artwork." Sarah's voice came softly, apologetic. She had approached quietly, her clipboard now tucked under her arm. "It's delicate." Elliot withdrew his hand, his eyes never leaving the painting. "I knew her," he whispered, more to himself than to Sarah. "The woman who painted this. Clara Velmont. She was everything." Sarah's brow furrowed, her curiosity piqued. "You knew Clara Velmont? The artist herself? That's incredible. Her life is such a mystery, hardly any records exist beyond her work." Elliot's lips twitched into a faint smile, bitter and wistful. She was more than her work. She was fire and storm, all at once. He paused, his voice dropping, and I let her slip away. Sarah stood beside him, her professional demeanor softening. "Would you like to tell me about her? I mean, if it's not too personal." He glanced at her, surprised by the genuine interest in her eyes. For a moment, he considered brushing her off, guarding his pain as he had for decades. But something in her kindness, or perhaps the weight of the years, loosened the knot in his chest. "Her name wasn't always Clara," he began. "She was Margaret when I knew her. Margaret Elaine Harper." Sarah's eyes widened. "Wait, Clara Velmont was a pseudonym? That's not in any of the records." Elliot nodded, his gaze returning to the painting. "She changed it after everything. I don't know why. Maybe to forget. Maybe to start over." His voice cracked, and he steadied himself against his cane. We were in love, you see. But I was a fool. I thought duty was more important than her. I thought I'd come back, and she'd be waiting. But she wasn't. The tour group had moved on, their voices fading into the next gallery. Sarah stayed, her clipboard forgotten, her attention wholly on Elliot. What happened? She asked softly. He took a deep breath, the memories rushing in like the waves in the painting. I went to war. She begged me not to, said she had a bad feeling. I didn't listen. When I came back, she was gone. No one knew where. I searched God, I searched everywhere. But it was like she vanished into the sea. Sarah's hand rested lightly on his arm, a gesture of comfort that surprised him. That must have been so hard, she said. To lose someone like that. Elliot's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He had spent all his tears long ago. I thought I'd find her one day. I thought maybe she'd come back to this painting. It was her favorite, you know. She said it reminded her of us wild, untamed, standing against the storm. The museum seemed to grow quieter, the air thicker with the weight of his words. Sarah glanced at the painting, then back at Elliot. Do you think she's still out there? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elliot shook his head. I don't know. But standing here, it's the closest I've felt to her in 60 years. A sudden movement caught Sarah's eye. A woman, older, with a scarf draped over her shoulders, standing at the edge of the gallery. She was watching them, her face half hidden in shadow, but her posture was strikingly familiar. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Sir, she said, her voice trembling slightly. There's someone over there. She's been watching us. Elliot turned slowly, his breath catching as he followed Sarah's gaze. The woman stepped forward, her face coming into the light. Her hair was white, her features etched with time, but her eyes, those piercing, storm-gray eyes, were unmistakable. Margaret. Elliot's voice was a broken whisper, his cane slipping from his hand. The museum's marble floor seemed to tilt beneath Elliot's feet as he stared at the woman. Her eyes, those storm-gray eyes, held him captive, pulling him through decades in an instant. Margaret, the ghost of her, stood motionless, her scarf fluttering slightly in the draft from an unseen vent. Sarah, sensing the weight of the moment, stepped back, her clipboard clutched tightly to her chest. Sir, do you know her? She whispered, but Elliot didn't hear. His world had narrowed to the woman across the gallery, her presence a riddle he wasn't sure he could solve. The woman took a tentative step forward, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. She was older, yes, but time had not erased the fire in her gaze, the same fire that had once lit up Elliot's world. He wanted to run to her, to demand answers, to beg forgiveness, but his legs felt rooted to the spot. His cane lay forgotten on the floor, and Sarah quietly picked it up, her eyes darting between the two. Margaret, Elliot said again, louder this time, his voice carrying across the gallery. Heads turned, tourists, a security guard, a janitor pushing a cart, but the woman didn't flinch. She held his gaze, her expression unreadable, a mix of sorrow and something deeper, something unresolved. She spoke at last, her voice soft but clear, like a melody from a half-remembered song. Elliot Grayson, I never thought I'd see you here. The words hit him like a wave, crashing over 60 years of regret. He stumbled forward, his hands trembling. It's you. It's really you. His voice broke, and he didn't care who heard. Where did you go? Why did you leave? Margaret's eyes softened, but there was a hardness there too, a wall built over decades. I didn't leave, Elliot. You did. Her words were gentle but sharp, cutting through the haze of memory. You chose the war. You chose duty. I begged you to stay, but you didn't listen. Elliot's throat tightened. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I'd come back, and we'd have our life together. But you were gone, Margaret. I looked for you. Everywhere. She shook her head, her scarf slipping slightly to reveal a silver necklace, a locket he recognized instantly, the one he'd given her the night before he left for the war. I couldn't stay, she said. Not after you left. Not after. She trailed off, her gaze drifting to the silent shore. I had to become someone else. Clara Velmont was my way out. Sarah, still standing nearby, gasped softly. You're Clara Velmont? She asked, her voice barely audible. The artist. Margaret's lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. I was. A long time ago. She turned back to Elliot. This painting, it was my heart, poured onto canvas. It was everything I felt when you left. The storm, the cliff, The figure standing Allenite was me, Elliot. It was always me. Elliot's knees buckled, and Sarah quickly steadied him, her hand gentle but firm on his arm. He leaned against her, his eyes locked on Margaret. I didn't know, he said, his voice raw. I didn't know you were hurting so much. I thought you'd moved on. Moved on. Margaret's voice rose, a flicker of the fire he remembered. I loved you, Elliot. I waited for you, for months, until I couldn't bear the silence anymore. I wrote letters you never answered. I stood on that cliff in my heart every day, waiting for you to come back. But you didn't. Elliot's chest ached, the weight of her words crushing him. I wrote to you, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. Every week, I sent letters. They must not have reached you. The war, it was chaos. I came back. Margaret, I swear I did. But you were gone. A silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. The museum seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the painting that had bound their lives together. Sarah, still holding Elliot's cane, felt like an intruder in a story she couldn't fully understand, yet she couldn't look away. Margaret took another step closer, her locket glinting in the light. I kept this, she said, touching the necklace. Even when I became Clara, even when I tried to forget you, I couldn't let it go. Elliot's eyes filled with tears, but he fought them back. I never stopped loving you, he said. Not a single day. This painting, it's why I came back here. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd be here too. Margaret's expression softened, but there was a distance in her eyes, a life lived apart from him. I came back to see it one last time, she said. I'm not well, Elliot. The doctors, they say, I don't have much time. The words hit him like a physical blow. Sarah's grip on his arm tightened, her own eyes glistening. I'm so sorry, she whispered, not sure who she was addressing. Elliot shook his head, refusing to accept it. No, you can't leave me again. Not now. His voice was fierce, the voice of the young man he'd once been, the one who'd promised her the world. Margaret smiled, a sad, knowing smile. I'm not leaving yet, she said. But we need to talk, Elliot. Really talk. There's so much you don't know. Before he could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Clara? Is that you? A man, perhaps in his 60s, approached from the far side of the gallery. He was tall, with a gentle face and a slight limp, carrying a sketchbook under his arm. His eyes widened as he saw Margaret, then narrowed as they landed on Elliot. Margaret turned, her expression shifting to one of quiet affection. Daniel, she said, her voice warm. This is Elliot. An old friend. Daniel's gaze flickered between them, a mix of curiosity and protectiveness. An old friend, he repeated, his tone neutral but guarded. He extended a hand to Elliot, who took it hesitantly. I'm Daniel Velmont, Clara's husband. The word husband struck Elliot like a thunderbolt. Sarah gasped softly, her eyes darting to Margaret, who looked away, her fingers tightening around her locket. Elliot's world tilted again, the painting behind him blurring as he processed the revelation. Margaret Clara had built a life without him, a life he knew nothing about. Elliot's hand lingered in Daniel's grip, the handshake a fragile bridge between two worlds. Husband. The word echoed in his mind, a sharp reminder of the decades that had slipped through his fingers. Margaret, no. Clara stood between them, her eyes darting from one man to the other, her locket clutched tightly, as if it could anchor her in this storm of memory and truth. Daniel's expression softened as he released Elliot's hand. Clara's told me about you, he said, his voice steady but kind. Not everything, but enough. You're the one from before the war, aren't you? Elliot nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He glanced at Clara, searching for the girl he'd known, but she was a mosaic, now part Margaret, part Clara, part someone he didn't know at all. Sarah, still holding his cane, shifted uncomfortably, her presence a quiet tether to the present. I didn't know you were married, Elliot said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know you'd moved on. Clara's eyes glistened, but she held her composure. I didn't move on, Elliot. I survived. There's a difference. She paused, her gaze drifting to the painting. After you left, I was lost. I couldn't stay in the city, couldn't bear the memories. So I left, changed my name, became Clara Velmont. Painting was the only thing that kept me whole. Daniel stepped closer to her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. She built a life, he said, his tone gentle but firm. A good one, even if it wasn't the one she planned. Elliot's chest tightened, a mix of jealousy and gratitude warring within him. He wanted to hate Daniel, to resent the man who had taken his place, but there was a quiet strength in Daniel's eyes, a love for Clara that was undeniable. "How did you meet?" Elliot asked, his voice hoarse. Clara smiled faintly, her fingers tracing the locket. "Daniel was a curator in Paris. I was exhibiting my work there years after I left America. He saw something in my paintings, something I didn't even see myself." She glanced at Daniel, her eyes softening. "He saw me." Daniel chuckled, a warm sound that cut through the tension. "She was a storm, this one. Still is. I couldn't help but fall for her." His expression grew serious. "But she never forgot you, Elliot. That locket's worn it every day for 40 years. Elliot's gaze dropped to the locket, the one he'd given her when he was 22, when the world was theirs to conquer. He wanted to ask why she kept it, why she held on to a piece of him when she had built a new life. But the words wouldn't come. Sarah, who had been silent, cleared her throat. Maybe you all could sit down somewhere. Talk privately." She gestured toward a bench near the painting, her voice tentative but kind. "I can make sure no one disturbs you." Clara nodded, her expression grateful. "Thank you, Sarah. That would be good." The four of them moved to the bench, an awkward procession through the quiet gallery. Elliot sat first, his hands folded over his cane, which Sarah had returned to him. Clara sat beside Daniel, their hands brushing briefly, a gesture that spoke of years of companionship. Sarah lingered nearby, unsure whether to stay or leave. "Tell me," Elliot said, his voice steadier now. "Tell me what happened after you left. I need to know." Clara took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the painting as if it could speak for her. "I went to Europe," she began. "I couldn't stay in New York, not with you gone and no word. I thought you were dead, Elliot. For months, I heard nothing. I was angry, heartbroken, lost. So I ran. I painted. I poured everything into my work, every tear, every hope, every regret." She gestured toward the silent shore. "This was my first real painting as Clara Velmont. It was my way of saying goodbye to you, to the life we planned. I thought if I could capture the pain, I could let it go. But I never could." Elliot's hands tightened around his cane. "I wrote to you," he said again, his voice raw. "Every chance I got. I don't know why the letters never reached you. The war, it broke everything." Daniel spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "The war broke a lot of things. Clara told me how it was letters lost, families torn apart. She thought you'd chosen to leave her, Elliot. She didn't know you were searching." Elliot's eyes burned, but he forced himself to meet Clara's gaze. "I never stopped. Even after I came back, even after I heard you'd left. I looked for you in every city, every gallery. I never married, Clara. I couldn't. Not after you." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of a life unlived. Clara's lips trembled, and for the first time, a tear escaped, tracing a slow path down her cheek. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you'd forgotten me." Daniel's hand tightened on hers, a silent reassurance. Sarah, standing a few feet away, wiped her own eyes, her clipboard forgotten. The museum felt like a sanctuary now, a place where time could bend, if only for a moment. "I have a daughter," Clara said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "Her name is Lily. She's the reason I kept going. I found out I was pregnant after I left New York. I didn't know until I was in London." Elliot froze, the revelation hitting him like a tidal wave. "A daughter?" His voice was barely audible, his mind racing. "Is she?" Clara nodded, her eyes locked on his. "She's yours, Elliot. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't even know if you were alive." The world seemed to stop. Elliot's breath caught, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might give out. A daughter. His daughter. The thought was too big, too overwhelming, a truth that reshaped everything he thought he knew. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, then caught herself, stepping back as if to give them space. Daniel stood, his expression unreadable. "I'll give you two a moment," he said quietly. "Clara, I'll be in the next gallery if you need me." He squeezed her hand and walked away, his limp more pronounced in the silence. Elliot stared at Clara, his mind a whirlwind. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Lily, where is she now?" Clara's eyes softened, but there was pain there too. "She's in New York. She's an artist, like me. She doesn't know about you, Elliot. I never told her." I thought it was better that way." The weight of her words settled over him, a mix of joy and sorrow so tangled he couldn't separate them. He had a daughter, a piece of him and Margaret, alive in the world. But she didn't know him. And Clara was sick, her time running out. "We have to tell her," Elliot said, his voice fierce. "She deserves to know. And I need to meet her." Clara nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I know. I want that too. But it's not simple, Elliot. She's built her own life. She might not be ready for this." "Then we'll make her ready," he said, his old stubbornness flaring. "I've lost too much time already. I won't lose her too." Elliot's words hung in the air, a vow forged in the heat of rediscovery. Clara wiped her tears, her storm-gray eyes searching his face for the young man she'd loved, the one who had promised her forever. The museum, with its towering paintings and hushed reverence, felt like a crucible, forging something new from the ashes of their past. Sarah, still lingering nearby, shifted her weight, her clipboard a forgotten prop. "I can help," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "I mean, if you need to find your daughter or arrange a meeting. I know people in the art world. I could make some calls." Elliot and Clara turned to her, surprised by her offer. "That's kind of you," Clara said, her voice soft but grateful. "But this is complicated. Lily doesn't know any of this. I've kept it from her for so long." Elliot's jaw tightened. "She's my daughter too," he said, his voice low but firm. "I have a right to know her. And she has a right to know me." Clara nodded, but her expression was heavy with doubt. "I know. But she's 45 now, Elliot. She has her own life, her own family. Dropping this on her, it could break her heart. Or it could make it whole," Elliot countered, his eyes blazing with a determination Sarah hadn't seen before. "I've spent 60 years living with half a heart. I won't let her live that way too." Sarah stepped closer, her voice tentative but earnest. Maybe you could start small, write her a letter, or meet her somewhere neutral. I could help you find her gallery. She's an artist, right? There can't be too many Lily Velmonts in New York's art scene." Clara's lips curved into a faint smile, a spark of hope in her eyes. "She goes by Lily Harper," she said. "My maiden name. She always liked it better." She paused, her fingers brushing the locket. "She's showing at a small gallery in Soho this week. I was going to go, but I wasn't sure I could face her, knowing what I know now." Elliot's breath caught. "She's here? In New York?" The thought of his daughter, so close after all these years, sent a surge of urgency through him. "We have to go? Now." Clara hesitated, her eyes darting to the painting, then back to Elliot. "It's not that simple," she said. "I'm not well, Elliot. The doctors gave me months, maybe less. I don't know if I can handle seeing her, telling her everything." And then her voice broke, and she looked away. Elliot reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Then we do it together," he said. "You and me. Like we should have all those years ago." Sarah watched them, her heart aching with the weight of their story. She glanced at the silent shore, its stormy waves seeming to churn with their unresolved pain. "I'll drive you," she said suddenly, surprising even herself. "To the gallery. I have a car outside. We can go tonight, if you're ready." Clara's eyes widened, and Elliot turned to Sarah, his expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "You do that?" he asked. "For two old strangers?" "You're not strangers," Sarah said, her voice soft but certain. "Not anymore." The decision was made in a heartbeat. Sarah led them out of the museum, Elliot leaning on his cane, Clara's arm linked with his. The city outside was alive with lights and noise, a stark contrast to the quiet reverence of the gallery. Sarah's car, a modest sedan, waited in the parking lot, and she helped Elliot into the front seat while Clara settled in the back, her locket glinting in the streetlight. The drive to Soho was quiet, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Elliot stared out the window, his mind racing with thoughts of Lily, what she looked like, what she sounded like, whether she'd inherited Margaret's fire or his stubbornness. Clara clutched her scarf, her breathing uneven, her thoughts a tangle of hope and fear. When they arrived at the gallery, a small, brightly lit space tucked between a bookstore and a cafe, Sarah parked and turned to them. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice gentle. Elliot nodded, his jaw set. "I've waited 60 years. I'm not waiting another minute." Clara took a deep breath, her hand trembling as she reached for the door. "Let's do this," she said, her voice barely audible. Inside, The gallery was crowded, filled with the hum of conversation and the clink of wine glasses. Paintings lined the walls, vibrant and bold, each one signed Lily Harper. Elliot's heart pounded as he scanned the room, searching for a face he didn't know but felt in his bones. "There," Clara whispered, pointing to a woman across the room. She was tall, with dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes a familiar storm gray. She was speaking to a small group, her hands animated, her smile bright but tinged with something wistful. Elliot froze, his cane trembling in his grip. "That's her," he said, his voice breaking. "That's my daughter." Clara's hand found his, squeezing tightly. "She's beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just like you." Sarah stayed back, giving them space as they approached. Lily turned, her smile faltering as she saw Clara. "Mom?" she said, her voice laced with surprise. Then her eyes landed on Elliot, and she frowned, sensing something she couldn't name. "Lily," Clara said, her voice trembling. "There's someone you need to meet." Lily's gaze shifted between them, confusion giving way to curiosity. Who is this?" she asked, her eyes locking onto Elliot's. He stepped forward, his heart in his throat. "I'm your father," he said, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. "And I've been looking for you my whole life." Lily's face paled, her hand flying to her chest. The room seemed to still, the crowd fading into the background as the truth hung between them. Clara's tears fell freely now, and Elliot's eyes glistened, but he held his daughter's gaze, willing her to see the love he'd carried for her, even without knowing her name. Lily took a step back, her breath shaky. "My father," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Mom, what is this?" Clara reached for her, but Lily pulled away, her eyes wide with shock. "I need to understand," she said, her voice rising. "All these years, you told me my father was gone. Dead. And now he's here." Elliot's heart sank, but he stood his ground. "I didn't know about you, Lily," he said. "Not until today. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Lily's eyes darted between them, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. Sarah, watching from a distance, felt her own heartache, knowing this was only the beginning of their journey.